तीर्थ ध्यान कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। भावातीत ध्यान कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। अनुभव कर लो, अनुभव कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। 20 मिनट बस ध्यान कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। सुबह शाम बस ध्यान कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। आसन प्राणायाम कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। अनुभव कर लो, अनुभव कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। भावातीत ध्यान कर लो। सबकी आत्मा शांति का सागर है, सबकी आत्मा आनंद का सागर है। सबकी आत्मा शांति का सागर है, सबकी आत्मा ज्ञान का सागर है। सबकी आत्मा ज्ञान का सागर है, सबकी आत्मा शक्ति का सागर है, सागर है, सागर है। अनुभव कर लो, अनुभव कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। 20 मिनट बस ध्यान कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। सुबह शाम बस ध्यान कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। आसन प्राणायाम कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। भावातीत ध्यान कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। अनुभव कर लो, अनुभव कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा।
जय गुरुदेव। स्वागतम। We will begin with Mala Sahana Bhavatu and then Mala of the last 2 verses that we have discussed in our Gita Satsang last week. Panditji, Sahana Bhavatu, please. पंडित जी अनम्यूट एंड कृपया सहना भवतु बोलना।
जी दीदी, जय गुरुदेव।
जय गुरुदेव।
ओम सहना भवतु सहनो भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। जय गुरुदेव।
अब 2 श्लोकों का माला करना। श्लोक नंबर 6 और 7
जी दीदी, जय गुरुदेव।
Jay.
संन्यासस्तु महाबाहो दुःखमाप्तुमयो गतः योगयुक्तो मुनिर्ब्रह्म न चिरेणाधिगच्छति योगयुक्तो विशुद्धात्मा विजितात्मा जितेन्द्रियः सर्वभूतात्मभूतात्मा कुर्वन्नपि न लिप्यते। ओम।
Jai Gurudev. In the last session, we have studied shlokas 3 to 7. And the brief recap of these shlokas is like this. Know him to be ever a man of renunciation, who neither hates nor desires. Free from the fears of opposites, he is easily released from bondage, O mighty armed. The ignorant and not the wise speak of the path of knowledge, Sankhya, and the path of action, Yoga, as different. He who is properly established even in one gains the fruit of the both. The state attained by men on the path of knowledge is also reached by those on the path of action. He who sees Sankhya and Yoga to be one, verily he sees. Renunciation is indeed hard to attain without yoga, O mighty armed. The sage who is intent on yoga comes to Brahman without long delay. Intent on yoga, pure of spirit, he who has fully mastered himself and has conquered the senses, whose self has become the self of all beings, he is not involved even while he acts. So, in the recap, I would like to mention one point that is often misunderstood, and that is, in the last but one shloka, it says that the yoga is difficult. And the reason it is said difficult is because Maharishi said in the commentary that one has to be intent in order to attain Brahman. What does that mean? That means one has to be regular in practice, twice daily, without fail. And then he has to be very regular. In between morning and evening meditation, one should take life easy, because if one strains in between the two meditations, then one will be accumulating more stress. And then the infusion of being that we have been talking about does not take place properly. So some people are not able to take life easy and be relaxed in between the morning and evening meditation. And if they don't, then it will be difficult to attain higher states of consciousness. That is why this yoga is difficult. But otherwise, it's not difficult, because all along we have been saying that reaching higher states of consciousness is easy. Maharishi mentioned it many times. But the reason it becomes difficult is if you are not intent on yoga, and if you don't do your meditation morning and evening regularly and take it easy. So our favorite slogan, as you all know by now, is TM, AM, PM. And then I would like to add one more thing to it, and that is take it easy in between your morning and evening TM. Then that will definitely help us to rise to higher states of consciousness. Okay, so we are done with the recap. Now we will begin to study verses 8 to 12. And पंडित जी कृपया पंडित जी ने हम ही बोलेंगे we will take verses 8 and 9 together because they are connected. Naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manyeta tattvavit pashyan shunvan splushan jighran gachan swapan shvasan. I made a mistake here. Naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manyeta tattvavit pashyan shunvan sprushan jighran ashnan gachan swapan shvasan. Pralapan visrujan bruhnan unmishan nimishannapi indriyani indriyartheshu vartanta iti dharayan. Pralapan visrujan bruhnan unmishan nimishannapi indriyani indriyartheshu vartanta iti dharayan. One who is in union with the divine and who knows the truth will maintain, I do not act at all. In seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, walking, sleeping, breathing, speaking, letting go, ceasing, and even in opening and closing the eyes. He holds simply that the senses act among the objects of sense. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. One who is in union with the divine nature is completely separate from the field of activity. When this has been realized, the self is experienced as independent of activity. Then the teaching of this verse becomes a living reality of daily life. One who knows the truth is one who knows that life has two aspects, relative and absolute, and that the field of relative life is governed by the three gunas. He knows through understanding and experience that the self is separate from the field of activity. This basic knowledge about the self and the nature of activity creates a situation in the mind where the realized man is automatically established in the truth of the expression, I do not act at all. It is not that he holds on to this thought artificially, but that the very structure of his mind is based on this natural non attachment. He lives this state. To him, non attachment is a living reality in daily life. He acts and experiences making use of his senses, but within himself, he is fixed in being. He lives fullness of being while fully engaged in the field of the senses. He lives twofold. The stability of changeless being constitutes the inner core of his life, and on the periphery is found the activity of the sensory level, the senses engaged in the experience of their objects. This is what Sri Krishna Bhagavan means when he says, the senses act among the object of sense. These two verses develop the idea expressed in the previous one, when, through the practice of transcendental meditation, cosmic consciousness has been gained and the individual ego has expanded to cosmic status. The mind automatically functions from the level of its full potentiality, and the senses, having reached their maximum development, function at their highest capacity. The object of the sense, however, remain in their unchanged state. That is why the senses, acting from their raised level, experience object more completely, resulting in an even greater appreciation of the objects and thus providing experience of greater happiness on the sensory level. This creates a situation in which the objects of sense are enjoyed more thoroughly than before. But because being is more fully grounded in the very nature of mind, the impressions of sensory experience fail to capture the mind. The enlightened man thus naturally remains in a state where the senses continue to experience their objects while he remains free. This is merely a comparative statement. It does not in any way imply that such a man becomes incapable of experience. It only means that whereas before enlightenment, experience in the world used to overshadow his being, now his being shines forth through all experience. Before enlightenment, if he saw a flower, the flower overwhelmed the mind so completely that only the flower remained and the experiencer were lost in the experience. The subject was as if annihilated by the object. Life in which objects predominate, where matter alone is found and the values of the spirit or the soul are overshadowed, is called material life. After enlightenment, the flower is still seen, but the experience of the flower does not overshadow being, because being has been realized as separate from the field of activity, and thus the subject and the object are both separately maintained, both, so to speak, alive in their fullness. The flower fails to overshadow being, and at the same time, the light of being does not diminish the validity of the flower. Through the light of being, the flower is appreciated infinitely more, and this brings about the integration of spirit and matter. This is the glory of transcendental meditation. It brings enlightenment that integrates all the material values of life with the divine. Jagute?
Okay. So these two shlokas are telling us that one who is united, that is yoga yukta, and one who is the knower of the truth, tattvavit. These two qualities are mentioned. He is yoga yukta, united, and he is tattvavit. He knows the truth. He is aware that while he is seeing, hearing, eating, walking, sleeping, breathing, speaking, opening and closing up the eyes, the senses act among the objects of the sense. Because he is a tattvavit, that means because he is the knower of truth, he knows that there are two aspects of life. One absolute and the other relative. Relative is with gunas, we know that. And he knows from understanding and experience that self is separate from activity. That means mind is established in the truth. Remember, Maharishi said, Man Atma mein bait jata hai. Mind gets merged in Atma. So, mind knows that it is not acting at all because mind has merged in Atma and the actions are away from it. And this is not on the intellectual level. He lives it. It's a living reality. And what is that living reality? He is fixed in Atma, but the senses act amongst themselves. Remember, we studied in 3rd chapter, 28th verse, Guna guneshu vartante iti matva na sajjate. So, what is happening here? Before enlightenment, if the enlightened person saw a beautiful rose, the flower overshadows the mind. And he's totally absorbed in appreciation of the flower. But now, because he is established in pure consciousness and he is Atmavan, he is possessed of the self. The light of pure consciousness shines forth through all experience. And because of this, the sense objects are appreciated infinitely more. And this brings about integration of spirit and matter. Life in which objects predominate, where matter alone is found, and the values of spirit or soul are overshadowed, is called as material life. In Jivan Mukta, the sense enjoyments and experiences do not overshadow Atma. And so, while he enjoys them, he does not lose vision of divine Atma. And he is always aware that he is in the fullness of Atma. Thus, there is integration of material values with spiritual values. Then life is beautiful. So I'll stop now here, and Anita ji will cover the scientific research of both 8 and 9 shlokas, one after
Right.
the other. Please go ahead.
Yes. So in the verse 8, when we have come to know that one who is in divine union with the divine, and here also we know that I do not act at all. That situation is where you are in a stabilized, restful alertness. And this only takes place through transcendental meditation and Siddhi program. And what happens during this stabilized, restful alertness? There is an increased brain wave coherence. To be continued, in such a situation, in verse 9, there becomes more internal comprehension because your brain now is in absolute coordination in all the three aspects. You are the knower, knowing, and the known. And in this state of mind, what happens that there are increased motor skills, there is increased cognitive skills, increased greater comprehension, greater concentration, and you are faster in your cognitive abilities. So, this is absolutely a beautiful scientific research because once you are in union with God, you are in that wonderful, blissful state. Jai Gurudev.
Very good. Any questions? Please go ahead. Okay. So if there are no questions, we will move on to the next shloka, and I will read the Sanskrit and then we'll read commentary. ब्रह्मण्याधाय कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा करोति यः लिप्यते न स पापेन पद्मपत्रमिवाम्भसा. ब्रह्मण्याधाय कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा करोति यः लिप्यते न स पापेन पद्मपत्रमिवाम्भसा. He who acts giving over all actions to the universal being abandoning attachment is untouched by sin. As a lotus leaf by water. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. Universal being, Brahman, the ultimate reality, the absolute, and the relative together at the same time. The inward stroke of meditation leads the mind to self-consciousness and infuses the state of self-consciousness being into the nature of the mind. The outward stroke of meditation brings such a mind into the field of action where it acts with a certain degree of being. This practice of meditation and the activity that follows it, morning and evening meditation and activity during the day, develop a state in which the nature of the mind becomes transformed into the state of being, while the ability to act in all fields of practical life is fully maintained. Only when the mind, thus established in the self, acts from the state of universal being, is it possible to act, giving over all actions to the universal being. In that state, one has gained cosmic consciousness, which is the level of universal being. These words do not mean that a man should act while holding in his mind the thought of the universal being. This verse does not teach an intellectually conceit surrender to the universal being or cherishing the thought of it or making a mood of the divine or remembering God while working. It does not teach that any such attempts on the level of the mind or intellect can lead a man to a sinless state. All actions are given over naturally to the divine being, and all attachments are abandoned naturally when, through the practice of transcendental meditation, the mind rises to the level of divine consciousness and maintains it permanently. When the self has completely separated itself from activity, then a situation is created in which the authorship of the action becomes automatically transferred to the universal being. Untouched by sin means free from any wrong, a life that is completely harmless, being in accordance with the laws of nature. This state is gained in cosmic consciousness, in which the self is completely separate from activity. It is in this state that actions are motivated by the power of nature responsible for all creation and evolution. That is why they all produce life-supporting effects and no wrong is possible. Jai Gurudev.
So here what Brahman is described, Brahman is ultimate reality, absolute and relative together at the same time. With inward stroke of meditation, mind goes to self. We are going inward towards the self, and with outward stroke, the mind comes to the field of action. We are coming out of meditation, where it acts with some degree of being. Because you went in, you're coming out with the value of being into the activity. And this alternating of meditation and activity develops a state where the nature of mind gets transformed into the state of being. You remember in the TM course, when we learned TM, we were telling the course participants, you go in, and then when you reach the depths of the ocean, there are gems and precious jewels there. So you get hold of them, and when you come out, you bring them out into the activity. So that's what takes place. So you come out enriched. And also what's happening when you transcend, you experience yourself as separate from the activity of the surface. Then what happens? All actions are naturally given over to Paramatma. That's what you experience when you transcend Brahman. Because mind merges into Atma and all attachments are away from Atma. And because of that, then you're abandoning all that is happening on the outside. Because self is separate, actions are separate. So it is like abandoning the actions that are in the relative world. Then one is untouched by sin. Means free from wrongdoing. Because he is established in the home of all the laws of nature, from where one is able to perform spontaneous right action. And all his actions produce life-supporting effects. Because we have studied in the previous chapters and verses that Atma is the home of all the laws of nature. And from there, one can only perform right action, and that right action is spontaneous. You don't have to try hard to do the right action. And because all of these are right actions, they produce life-supporting effects. So there is no chance of committing any sin. So now I'll stop here. We are not doing scientific research on this one because we have already covered it in the past shlokas. It's a repetition. And so if there are any questions, please go ahead.
Hemaji, there's very one important point which I found in the scientific research, which gives a comparison of Maharishi Transcendental Meditation, and which shows that how superior it is from contemplation and concentration. And that is how, through this Maharishi Transcendental Meditation, we achieve more self-actualization. And that I will not describe. As you say, we all know it.
Okay. So there is some distinction made between our simple technique and the other techniques where some people are engaged in concentration. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up because that is a significant point. And I think we will be talking about it some more later on also in the future shloka. Okay, very good. Any questions, please? Okay. So if there are no questions, we will move on. I will read shloka number 11. कायेन मनसा बुद्ध्या केवलैरिन्द्रियैरपि योगिनः कर्म कुर्वन्ति सङ्गं त्यक्त्वात्मशुद्धये. कायेन मनसा बुद्ध्या केवलैरिन्द्रियैरपि योगिनः कर्म कुर्वन्ति सङ्गं त्यक्त्वात्मशुद्धये. By means of the body, by the mind, by the intellect, and even by the senses alone, yogis abandoning attachment perform action for self-purification. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev, here Shri Krishna Bhagavan makes clear the necessity of action for self-purification. Towards what state of self-purification does a yogi aim when he performs action? Through the practice of samadhi. Does not a yogi already have a pure state of consciousness? Is not the practice of samadhi sufficient to purify the soul? It seems not. For here Shri Krishna Bhagavan is clearly expressing the need for performance of action for that degree of self-purification which is not gained by samadhi alone. Yogis, they who are united with the divine in transcendental consciousness, cosmic consciousness, or God consciousness. When a yogi has attained cosmic consciousness and has realized the self as separate from the field of activity, he is able, by the virtue of this realization, to entertain activity while yet remaining in the eternal freedom of the self. Because performance of the action in this state of realization does not involve the self. It naturally remains on the level of body, mind, intellect, and senses. The word alone in this context is highly significant. It establishes without doubt and with all possible emphasis the separateness of the self from the activity in the life of a realized man. Moreover, it also means that in this state of realization, the body, the mind, the intellect, and the senses are capable of acting quite independently. During the practice of transcendental meditation, as the mind gains transcendental consciousness, the metabolism of the body is reduced to a minimum and the entire nervous system gains a state of restful alertness. This is the physical condition corresponding to the state of being. In this state, the mental and physical levels of the individual life come to the level of the cosmic life of the omnipresent being. The individual mind is held by cosmic intelligence and individual physical existence sustained by cosmic existence. They become its instrument and begin to respond to the cosmic need. When cosmic consciousness has been gained, this situation is made permanent. Body, mind, intellect, and senses remain the instrument of the divine will, irrespective of the mode of activity. In this state, the main motivating force of the activity is the divine will, the almighty cosmic intelligence responsible for the creation and evolution of the entire cosmos. Just as everything in nature responds to the need of cosmic purpose, so man's body, mind, intellect, and senses brought to the level of cosmic intelligence respond to the need of cosmic life. This is what Sri Krishna Bhagavan means when he says, by means of the body, by the mind, by the intellect, and even by the senses alone, yogis abandoning attachment perform action. The significance of the expression abandoning attachment in this context is that in coming under the direct influence of the divine intelligence, the whole field of activity leaves the realm of the individual self, when, which then gains freedom from the binding influence of action, because a man has risen to the level of divine being. Abandoning attachment automatically becomes a living reality of his daily life without the need to cultivate non-attachment at any time. Jai Gurudev. Yes, Hemaji, we will continue self-purification point afterwards.
Yes. Yeah. So this verse tells us about the necessity of action for self-purification. And this word here, self-purification, is with a small s. There is a self with small s and self with a capital S. So here we are talking about self-purification of the small self. That is Atma shudhi. Now, isn't samadhi enough to purify the soul? It seems not. There's something more is needed. So let's dwell on this a little bit and try to understand. When the yogi is in cosmic consciousness, one is acting without involving the self. By now, we all know that. In meditation, one has the experience of restful alertness. We heard that term many times. Now, in this restful alertness, where the body is resting on physical level, we are feeling rested. And on mental level, mind is at the cosmic level. And individual mind is held by cosmic intelligence because the mind is at the level of the cosmos. In this state, they respond to the need of the time. And they are motivated by the divine will because they are at the cosmic level. So, in cosmic consciousness, there is duality. Self is experienced as separate from activity. With self-purification, this duality is transformed into the light of God, into unity of God consciousness. So this is the culmination of Atma shudhi, that is self-purification. So if you notice, like I said, this is with the small self. So the purification here is for the small self and not for the self with capital S. And we will talk about this more when we get to chapter 6 because it's elaborated over there. So we will take questions at the end of it. So we can continue reading now.
Okay, Hemaji. Then self-purification Pure consciousness is the pure state of self. It is the transcendental nature. The mind arrives at it by transcending even the subtlest experience of the relative field. When this state is alternated with activity, the mind gains pure consciousness permanently. Pure consciousness is then naturally maintained in spite of engagement in activity. In this state, the duality of life becomes a living reality. The two aspects of life, self and non self, absolute and relative, become separated, and the self is lived as pure being, unaligned with anything. This experience of complete separateness of the self and the activity should mean the culmination of the process of self purification. But still, the process continues, and finally, we give rise to that state of unity which does not accept activity even as separate from the self. Here, the separateness responsible for giving rise to a sense of duality in the state of cosmic consciousness is transformed into the light of God, allowing the duality of the self and the activity to merge into homogeneity of divine existence in the oneness of God consciousness. This state of the eternal unity of life is the real culmination of the process of self purification. The process of purification of the self thus has three stages. First, from waking state to of consciousness to transcendental consciousness. Second, from transcendental consciousness to cosmic consciousness. And third, from cosmic consciousness to God consciousness. In all three stages, it is necessary to perform action for self purification. Performance of action on the subtler levels of life enables one to transcend the field of activity and gain transcendental consciousness. By the alternation of transcendental consciousness with the normal natural activity of daily life, the mental activity of discrimination in the life of a recluse, and a physical activity in the life of a householder, transcendental consciousness becomes permanent and gains the status of cosmic consciousness. Again, cosmic consciousness develops into God consciousness by virtue of the most highly refined type of activity, the activity of devotion. This is how the process of purification is carried on to its ultimate conclusion through the performance of action. This verse brings out a technique for the performance of action in the state of cosmic consciousness, for it says, by means of the body, by the mind, by the intellect, and even by the senses alone, yogis perform action. It has already been shown in explaining the significance of the word alone. That action on this level is action in the state of cosmic consciousness, and this helps to transform cosmic consciousness into God consciousness. Jai Gurudev.
So here there are, it is explained that this transformation takes place in three stages. One, going from waking state to the transcendental consciousness. We go inward and then we get established in transcendental consciousness. So this is the first stage in developing to the higher states of consciousness. Here we are learning about the importance of action in rising to higher states of consciousness. So the first stage is going from waking state to transcendental consciousness. In the next stage, we rise from transcendental consciousness to cosmic consciousness. And for that, we perform action. Householders do whatever they are supposed to do in their life, like go to school or work or doing work at home, whatever, doesn't matter. And the Jnana Yogi, they study scriptures and, they stay on the intellectual understanding and studying the Vedic literature and things like that. So that is the second stage in development of higher states of consciousness. Now, the third stage is from cosmic consciousness to the level of God consciousness. Now, in this transformation, what happens is one is engaged in highly refined activity. This refined activity enables one to expand the heart, and then one finds that one's heart is flowing in love and devotion to God. And then you are able to appreciate everything at a very fine level. Let's say you're going for a walk and you see the full moon and you go, how beautiful the full moon is. That is refined perception. Some people may be walking and they may not even notice that there is a beautiful moon there. So your perception becomes very, very refined. And then that's how you rise to God consciousness. So these three steps are accomplished at three different levels of action. So now I will stop. And Anitaji, did you find any other important scientific research?
Yes, yes,
Go ahead and
Hemati.
share. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, yes. Um, One is when we talk about abandoning attachment and performing action for self purification, one normal that we have read earlier is the self actualization and self sufficiency and all. But it has been noticed that there is an increase intrinsic spirituality. And this point I thought was not mentioned earlier, that now you are moving towards spirituality because the growth of your self actualization is such. Rest, you have explained that you have more acceptance for others and all. And also, very important point is there is loss of fear of death because there is more development of openness, receptivity, and a caring attitude towards everything, more positive approach. So that fear is also gone away, and we move in this scientific research, it says, towards more increased intrinsic spirituality. Jai Gurudev.
Okay, very good. I'm glad you brought that point out. Very good. Any questions? Please go ahead. Okay, no question. So we'll move on to the last shloka of today's discussion. And I will read the shloka and then we will continue with the discussion. I mean, reading and discussion. Yukta karma phalam tyaktva shantimapnoti naishtikim ayukta kamakarena phale sakto nibadhyate. Yuktah karma phalam tyaktva. Shantimapnoti naishtikim. Ayuktah kamakarena. Phale sakto nibadhyate. He who is united with the divine having abandoned the fruit of action, attains to lasting peace. He who is not united with the divine who is spurred by desire, being attached to the fruit of action, is firmly bound. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. Gaining unity with the divine is the key to gaining freedom from the bondage of the fruits of action, and this in turn is the key to gaining lasting peace. Unity with the divine is found in three states: in self-consciousness, which is of transcendental nature; in cosmic consciousness, which includes both the absolute and relative states of consciousness simultaneously; transcendental self-consciousness together with the consciousness of the waking, dreaming, or sleeping state; and in God consciousness, which holds together as one both the self and the field of activity. Having abandoned the fruit of action, this expression runs parallel to the expression giving overall actions to the universal being, abandoning attachment. In the state of lasting peace, the inner and outer phases of life both grow so strong that ultimately they become completely independent of each other. Inner being is experienced as wholly separate from activity, while activity grows so strong as to become completely independent of being. Being and activity both rise to their full stature. This is the state in which one lives in the divine and in the world simultaneously, in which activity is carried on spurred by nature and without the spur of desire in the self, in which one enjoys freedom from the bondage of action. This is the ideal of Sanyasa, life in complete detachment from the world of action. Who is spurred by desire, who is not firmly established in the self or the divine, because he lacks such firmness, he remains attached to the fruits of action, and because of this, firmly bound to the whole process of action from beginning to end. The present verse not only describes the state of one who is united with the divine, but also of one who is not so united. It points out the mechanics of bondage. When a man is not united with the self or the divine, the attachment to the fruits of action caused by desire is responsible for binding together the self and activity. It should not be lost to sight that this bondage is not real, for the self in its essential nature, being eternally free, can never be bound. Only so long as he has not realized this eternally free status of the self does a man feel attached to activity and therefore remain in bondage. How he can come out of the bondage of desire is explained in the following verse. Jai Gurdev.
So, this verse is telling us how to get lasting peace. And there are two steps to it. First, to gain unity with the divine, means become Atmavan, become possessed of the self. This happens when you transcend. Then, automatically, you're away from the fruit of action. Means you have abandoned the fruit of action. That means you are free from karma bandham. That means the binding influence of action. Because activity is carried out by nature, and that is separate when you transcend. So, because you are separate from that activity that is carried out by the gunas, you are free. And you are experiencing unbounded awareness. And you're not caught up in the boundaries. And so, because of that, you get lasting peace. And this verse is also telling us about one who is not united. Their desire causes attachment to the fruits of action because they are not experiencing that state of separateness of self from the activity. So whatever they're doing because they want some benefit from that. They do an action and they're looking for benefit from it because they don't have that experience of self, which is bliss consciousness. When you have bliss consciousness, you don't desire anything else because you are content. But before they learn to meditate, those people who are not having this knowledge of transcending or who are not practicing transcending, then they do actions and they expect the results, and then they will cause impressions, and then that cycle goes on. And that's how you are bound. So you are not able to get out of the binding influence of the actions. So now, scientific research. Anitaji, did you find anything interesting?
Yes, Hemaji.
Okay, go ahead.
So anyways, it says that when you have abandoned the fruit of action and you are going towards attaining a lasting peace, this happens only through TM when there is increased EEG coherence, and biologically they are saying there is a natural respiratory suspension, and because of that there is a higher EEG coherence, all overall frequencies and brain areas. And because of this coherence, we can connect the term attains a lasting peace. Because you only attain a lasting peace when you are stress free. So the EEG currents tells us that there is a natural suspension of respiratory. Your metabolic system goes so slow and everything is so well covered. And I found it very interesting that we talk about the lasting peace, but the basic concept remains that we have to reach the state of transcendental consciousness through transcendental meditation. Then only we can go talk about the lasting peace.
Okay. Very good point that you brought out. Any questions? Go ahead, please. So we have covered all the 4 shlokas for today. And now we will do a brief group meditation and then we will have recitation. But today we are also celebrating a birthday of one of our very dear course participants. She likes to be anonymous. It was her birthday yesterday. So Puja is supposed to join us and sing the Samskrita happy birthday song, Janmadinamidam. But she's not here. Maybe she'll join us. She said she'll join at 8:45. So we will wait for her. And I would like our dear friend who likes to be anonymous. So I won't say her name. It was her birthday yesterday. We will sing for her. But first, we will do group meditation. So let's sit comfortably and close eyes. Jai Gurudev. पंडित जी कृपया 5वां अध्याय का पारायण करना। अनम्यूट प्लीज।
जी दीदी, जय गुरुदेव।
जय गुरुदेव।
ओम पार्थाया प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणे स्वयं व्यासेनामृतितां पुराणानां मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसं ददामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुवन्ति देव्यैस्तवैर्वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैर्गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यां तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः। ॐ श्री परमात्मने नमः। अथ पंचमोऽध्यायः कर्मसन्न्यासयोगः। अर्जुन उवाच सन्न्यासं कर्मणां कृष्णं पुनर्योगं च संससि यच्छेयाये तयोरेकं तन्मे ब्रूहि सुनिश्चितम्। श्रीभगवानुवाच सन्न्यासः कर्मयोगश्च निःश्रेयसकरावुभौ तयोस्तु कर्मसन्न्यासात् कर्मयोगो विशिष्यते। ज्ञेया सा नित्यसन्न्यासी यो न द्वेष्टि न काङ्क्षति निर्द्वन्द्वो हि महाबाहो सुखं बन्धात् प्रमुच्यते। साङ्ख्ययोगौ पृथग्बाला प्रवदन्ति न पण्डिताः एकमप्यास्थिता सम्यग् उभयो विन्दते फलम्। यत्साङ्ख्यैः प्राप्यते स्थानं तद्योगैरपि गम्यते। एकं साङ्ख्यं च योगं च या पश्यति स पश्यति। सन्न्यासस्तु महाबाहो दुःखमाप्तुमयो गताः। योगयुक्तो मुनिर्ब्रह्मा न चिरेणाधिगच्छति। योगयुक्तो विशुद्धात्मा विजितात्मा जितेन्द्रियः सर्वभूतात्मभूतात्मा कुर्वन्नपि न लिप्यते। नैव किञ्चित् करोमीति युक्तो मन्येत तत्त्ववित्। पश्यन् शृण्वन् स्पृशन् जिघ्रन् अश्नन् गच्छन् स्वपन् श्वसन् प्रलपन् रसजन् गृह्णन् उन्मिषन्निवसन्नपि इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेषु वर्तन्त इति धारयन् ब्रह्माण्याधाय कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा करोति यः लिप्यते न स पापेन पद्मपत्रमिवाम्भसा कायेन मनसा बुद्ध्या केवलैरिन्द्रियैरपि योगिनः कर्म कुर्वन्ति सङ्गं त्यक्त्वात्मशुद्धये युक्तः कर्मफलं त्यक्त्वा शान्तिमाप्नोति नैष्ठिकीम् अयुक्तः कामकारेण फले सक्तो निबध्यते सर्वकर्माणि मनसा सन्न्यस्यास्ते सुखं वशी नवद्वारे पुरे देहि नैव कुर्वन्यकारयन् न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफलसंयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते न दत्ते कस्यचित् पापं न चैव सुकृतं विभुः अज्ञानेन ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः ज्ञानेन तु तत् ज्ञानं येषां नास्ति तमात्मनः तेषामादित्यवत् ज्ञानं प्रकाशयति तत्परम् तद्बुद्ध्यस्तदात्मानस्तन्निष्ठास्तत्परायणः गच्छन्त्य पुनरावृत्तिं ज्ञाननिर्धूतकल्मषाः विद्या विनय संपन्ने ब्राह्मणे कविहस्तिनि सुनिचैव स्वपाके च पंडिता समदर्शिनः इहैव त्यर्जितः सर्गो येषां साम्ये स्थितं मनः निर्दोषं हि समं ब्रह्म तस्माद् ब्रह्मणि ते स्थिताः न बृहस्येत् प्राप्य न द्विजेत् प्राप्य च प्रियम् स्थिरबुद्धिरसम्मूढो ब्रह्मविद् ब्रह्मणि स्थितः बाह्यस्पर्शे स्वसक्तात्मा विन्दत्यात्मनि यत्सुखम् स ब्रह्मयोगयुक्तात्मा सुखमक्षयमश्नुते ये हि संस्पर्शजा भोगा दुःखयोनय एव ते आद्यान्तवन्तः कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधः शक्नोति हैव या सोढुं प्राक् शरीरविमुक्षणात् क्रामकोधोद्भवं वेगं स युक्तः स सुखी नरः योऽन्तः सुखोऽन्तरारामस्तथान्तर्ज्योतिरेव यः स योगी ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं ब्रह्मभूतोऽधिगच्छति लभन्ते ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं ऋषयः क्षीणकल्मषाः छिन्नद्वैधात्यतात्मानः सर्वभूतहिते रताः कामः क्रोधविमुक्तानां यतीनां यतचेतसाम् अभितो ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं वर्तते विदितात्मनाम् स्पर्शान् कृत्वा बहिर्बाह्यश्चक्षुश्चैवान्तरे भ्रुवौ प्राणापानौ समौ कृत्वा नासाभ्यन्तरचारिणौ मुनिर्मोक्षपरायणः विगतेच्छाभयक्रोध या सदा मुक्त वशः भोक्तारं यज्ञतपसां सर्वलोकमहेश्वरम् सुहृदं सर्वभूतानां ज्ञात्वा मां शान्तिमिच्छति ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे कर्मसन्न्यासयोगो नाम पंचमोऽध्यायः। ओम।
Sri Krishna Arpanamastu.
Sri Krishna Arpanamastu. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. Today we have a birthday, and Puja was going to sing, but she's not here. So I will be reading. I can't sing this very beautiful birthday song in Sanskrita. And this is for our very dear participant who wants to be anonymous. We want to thank her for her silent contribution to our Maharishi Gita Satsang. And first I will read the Sanskritam song, and then I will read the meaning also. It goes like this. Janmadinamidam ai priya sakhe shantanotu te sarvada mudam prarthayamahe bhavashatayushi ishvara sada tvam cha rakshatu punyakarmana kirtimarjaya jivanam tava bhavatu sardhakam. It has beautiful meaning, and the meaning is like this. Oh friend, may this birthday of yours bring in auspiciousness and happiness. We pray that you enjoy 100 beautiful years of life, and may the Lord always protect you. May you earn fame by your virtuous actions, and may your life be fulfilling. So, on behalf of all of our Maharishi Gita Satsang participants, we wish you a most blissful and it's a belated, it was yesterday, a belated very happy birthday from all of us. Thank you for being with us. Jai Gurudev, Jai Maharishi.
Jai Gurudev Himachi.
Jai Gurudev. All of you can come on cameras now. We will end the meeting now. Thank you all for joining. It's always a joy to share Maharishi's knowledge with all of you. Thank you, Anita ji, Sunita, Bindu, and our very dear Maharishi Vedic Pandits who always do such a good job of recitation, and to our silent participant, Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
I will end the meeting now. We'll meet again next week, same time, same day. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. Jai Gurudev.